Do you sometimes dread hosting Thanksgiving and Christmas dinner because you know that a few guests are going to spoil everyone's enjoyment? Do you get tired of listening to the rude comments that just seem to occur every year? In today's episode, I'd like to share what I've been learning about how to control those people's comments so that you can have relaxing, enjoyable dinners. Hi, I'm Gail Jervis, and welcome to Life After 65. I'm an avid reader and researcher, and I've recently made it my mission to explore all the ways that my husband and I can live healthier, happier, more fulfilling lives as we learn to redefine aging. I started this channel to share what I've been learning with anyone else who has the same goal. Now, we think of Thanksgiving and Christmas, don't we, as special days of getting together with family and friends. But too many people find them tense, just waiting for that one person to say something that's going to disrupt everyone's enjoyment. But what if you have some strategies so that you would know how to diffuse at least some of the tension that can result from some of these guests? So I'm going to pose 9 scenarios and tell you what I've learned about taking control of each one of them. Let's begin. First scenario. Well, the guest has made some rude and inappropriate comments. Just imagine how angry Elizabeth in Jane Austen's novel Pride and Prejudice felt when she heard Dr. Darcy comment, "She is tolerable but not handsome enough to tempt me." Okay, one guest might make everyone uncomfortable just from mean comments like that. Or I like to use fiction or novels because I read a lot. Well, there's a character, Tom Buchanan, in the novel Great Gatsby, and he says, "I'd like to know who he is and what he does and where he even gets his money from." Can you imagine people asking questions about, "So, how much money do you make?" while sitting at the dinner table? Or even the former British Prime Minister, Winston Churchill. He's not above making rude comments at a dinner party. Lady Astor, who was openly critical of his drinking, criticized her rudeness by saying, "Lady Astor, if I were your husband, I would drink it." Okay, you might never have quite famous guests like that who are so rude, but you still could tell me and other people comments that you have heard at your dinner table that has just irked everyone, including the person who is receiving that rude comment. Now, what do you do when people like that think they can say anything to you? I mean, what if you had somebody say, "So, is this all the food you've got? I mean, I'm not going to get full on these small portions." Or, "Well, I hope the dessert is better than the main course. That turkey was a little dry." Did you cook all this yourself? I mean, I thought it tasted like the food down the street from that run-down cafeteria. What? I thought you said you were cooking us a gourmet dinner for Thanksgiving. What do you do when someone is so rude? Or what if they bring up controversial political opinions into the conversation and they start criticizing another guest? I don't know how you could ever support whoever. And then you start getting really tense conversations. Or perhaps your rude guest decides just to be intrusive, like I already mentioned, about asking personal questions about finances or debts. I mean, what do you do when this person starts saying, "Oh, I think you've gained a little weight, haven't you?" Or, "Boy, you're looking a little older than I saw you last year." What? And then there's the person who decides to probe into someone's personal life. "So, do you think you'll get married again? Do you know how to keep a man happy?" Handling a dinner guest who makes rude comments, besides just wanting to tell that person, "Would you please leave?" It requires tact, but it requires also assertiveness. What can you do or say so that your dinner party doesn't just get ruined by this outspoken person? Well, 1, try to anticipate who might become this disruptive guest. And I suspect if you have the same people, the same family and friends that are showing up, particularly on Thanksgiving or Christmas, you know who your possible guests are. who could cause a disruption. Julie Karlstedt, she's a counselor specializing in anxiety management. She suggests that you take time before your dinner to talk to that person about your expectations of their behavior during the event. And she says, be clear about the consequences of engaging in inappropriate or combative conversation. And if they do engage in the behavior during the event, you need to follow through on those consequences. You pull the guest aside, you keep your tone neutral, not emotional, and you hold the boundary you set. That's where you have to be tactful, but you're also firm and assertive. Another way, of course, is just be polite. Just redirect the conversation. Okay, I understand you've got your opinions, but let's focus on something else. And you hope that that person hears you. Or, okay, that's an interesting point, but you know what? I want to hear your thoughts on, create a new subject that nobody's going to get upset by. I prefer not to discuss that topic. Let's talk about something that everyone can enjoy, George. Or use your sense of humor. Sometimes humor can diffuse the tension and redirect the conversation. Well, that's one way to look at it. Hey, how about we switch gears and talk about, and you change the topic. Can you find something a little more humorous for our celebrating Thanksgiving? And of course, you just privately address the guest. If the comment is particularly inappropriate or disruptive, you just may have to talk to this person. During dinner, possibly. You can say, hey, I just need to talk to you for a minute in the kitchen. You want to prevent any further embarrassment. Hey, can we have a quick word? I think we need to, and then say it. I appreciate it. If we can keep this conversation more respectful so that everybody can enjoy this day. You've got to set boundaries. You clearly but politely set boundaries about what's acceptable for discussion. You might even just say to everybody, hey, I'd like to keep our conversation focused on topics that are enjoyable for everyone. So, do you mind? Let's not talk about politics or religion or whatever topic that you know can cause a tense conversation. And also, don't ever underestimate playing games to minimize the chance of those awkward conversations that you know doesn't always occur at the dinner table, but it occurs as soon as you end up in the living room. Well, plan on playing a few games to keep that night fun and festive. By the way, there's something we enjoy. It's called after dinner amusements. You can find them on Amazon. I've included a link below, but these are just simple group games that need no preparation. There's some mini mysteries your group can solve, or make it more competitive by dividing your group into two teams rather than doing it cooperatively. We recently played the game Odd Fact Out. It gives you three statements, one about the Eiffel Tower, but of course one is false. You have to decide which one is false. Or there's the game If the Shoe Fits. You take turns asking such questions as, who would dance on TikTok, or who would go solo to a movie theater? These after-dinner amusements take no preparation, and it just keeps the conversation light and enjoyable. Okay, I hope that helps some. Now, scenario 2. It's getting late, and one guest has settled in and just won't leave. I got to give you another example from fiction. I'm sorry if you don't like novels and plays, but that is my love. Okay, so Algernon in the play The Importance of Being Earnest. He's very self-absorbed, and he's completely ignorant of social norms. He says, I never travel without my diary. One should always have something sensational to read in the train. Now, this line kind of tells you what the man's like. He's pretty self-indulgent, pretty self-absorbed, and he's totally oblivious to social norms. So he's completely unaware that he's overstaying his welcome. Well, what do you do when you have a guest like that who just totally unaware that everybody else has left and you've been yawning for a while? And he's suddenly very interested in a long, lengthy conversation after everybody else has left. So, 1, just be direct. Tell them it's time to leave. I still remember 10 of us were at a relative's home for a birthday party. And actually, we were having lots of fun, just laughing at all the stories that were being shared. But oddly, around 8:30, yes, it was really early from our point of view, one of my relatives just stood up and said, so, I need to get ready for bed. We all quickly looked at each other since it was the weekend. He wasn't going to work the next morning, but we did quickly leave his home. However, it's still one of our extended family's favorite stories when he isn't there with us. But let's face it, speaking directly to his guests, no matter how early or how late, we did get the message. It was time to leave. I mean, perhaps you could speak directly, but a little more tactfully. Hey, I'm so sorry. I don't seem to be able to party as late as I used to. I hope you've had as much fun as I did, but I'm afraid it's time for everyone to go home. Everybody smiles. Oh, yeah, that's so true. But if you can't be quite so direct, here's a few things. Subtle hints through your actions. Start clearing away dishes, turning off music. Maybe doing a few things around, propping up some pillows. Maybe if you had the lights a little bit dimmed, raise the lights. I mean, all those actions should signal that the event is winding down. Now, the upside might be that the person might say, "Oh my gosh, let me help you." So at least you might get some help to get everything all tidied up for the next day. Now, 2, plan a specific end time before the event. Even just let everybody know, "Hey, I'm looking forward to seeing you all tonight, but I guess we'll have to wrap things up around 10 p.m.?" Or offer assistance with their departure. "Hey, let me get your coats and let me call a taxi if you need one." Suggest future plans to infer the party's over. "Hey, I'd love to catch up again soon. We really need to make some plans to get together again. Should we set some date before you guys leave right now?" Or 5, just express gratitude. "Thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure. But I tell you the truth, I need to get my beauty rest. I hope you have a safe trip home." Now, for some of us with chronically ill issues, it's actually very easy because I can't last too long. I just say, "I am so sorry. I've had such a good evening. I was so grateful that you guys could come over when I was having a better day, but I need to go to bed." Everybody understands that too. Scenario 3, how do you handle a dinner guest who's had too much to drink? This is not an easy situation to control. But here's a few suggestions. Number 1, evaluate how drunk this person is even when they've arrived, because they might already have arrived slightly inebriated. So it's not going to take too much for them to kind of go over the top. If they're becoming loud, disruptive, or showing signs of distress, you actually need to intervene. Now, you can encourage that guest to, "Hey, let me give you some more water or some coffee. Hey, I think we're shutting down the alcohol tonight." Make jokes, but help that person to absorb some of the alcohol with water and caffeine. Or provide a comfortable space. You might even say, "I'm just wondering, I feel like you've had a party before you got here. Hey, I'm going to take you to the bedroom and you just rest for 20 minutes. I'm going to call you in 20 minutes, okay?" Or enlist support. Discreetly ask another guest or a trusted friend to help you in managing the situation. And you can even offer assistance with transportation. Make sure that person does not drive home in his vehicle. So offer to call them a taxi or an Uber, or maybe you might even arrange another friend to take them home safely. Remember to keep the conversation light. It was so good to see you, and hey, I'm glad you had so much fun. But hey, here you go. Hey, your carriage waits. Your taxi's here. We'll have to catch up more later this week. Approach this situation with empathy and understanding. Don't get everyone all riled up and perhaps angry at this person. And perhaps that drunk person could no longer be the, funny drunk. He could become a mean drunk. Don't aggravate. Avoid also making the guest feel embarrassed or ashamed about their behavior. But you still have to set boundaries, because if it does get disruptive or disrespectful, you actually have to firmly remind them, "Hey, remember, you got to have some appropriate behavior here. Hey, how are you affecting everybody? Settle down." Or perhaps use humor. Just do something maybe to deflect perhaps any change of mood and perhaps any increasing desire for his part or her part to drink more. And follow up. Reach out to that guest the next day. Make sure they are okay, because we also don't know why they may have decided to drink so much. Now, I'm telling you, I've had experiences more when I was a young woman, a young girl, but this drinking and solving this drinking problem no easy solutions. It's incredibly difficult, especially if it's a family member who you love and your emotions are involved with that, and you also feel angry because that person is a relative and I don't want my relative to embarrass me anymore. But you're also you've got such mixed feelings because at the same time you want them safe, you want the well-being of that person, you want to be still respectful and compassionate toward that person. However, remember that as the party's host, you can be held liable if your inebriated guest gets angry and injures someone else or gets in a vehicle and causes an accident. By the way, if you're enjoying this episode, please consider subscribing to this channel. And if you do, please leave a comment below that you have subscribed, because I'd like to leave a comment saying thank you. And I'd love to read comments by anyone who has taken the time to listen to this episode and who may have additional helps for any one of these scenarios. Now, fourth scenario. A guest asks way too many personal questions. So again, let me mention before, I mentioned earlier Jane Austen's book Pride and Prejudice, just to give you a fictional character's example. Mrs. Bennet continually asking way too many personal questions because she is working so hard to get her daughter married to the right guy. So when Mr. Collins comes for dinner, she says, Mr. Collins, you must marry a clergyman like you must marry. Choose properly. Choose a gentlewoman for my sake and for your own. Let her be an active, useful sort of person, not brought up too high, but able to make a small income, goes a small way and a good way. What? And in the same way, Lady Catherine de Bourgh interferes by saying, I have a right to know the particulars of your connection with my nephew. Whoa, that's overstepping in both situations. How can we handle any dinner guest with some finesse and task who starts asking way too many personal questions? Well, you can try deflecting the question. You politely steer the conversation away from the personal topic by providing a brief general response, and then you redirect to a totally different subject. For example, okay, well, that's an interesting question, but hey, I don't really choose to discuss my personal matters. I like to keep everyone wondering about me. And then you just change the topic. Or you set boundaries. If the question makes you feel uncomfortable, you don't have to feel obligated to answer. You just firmly say, hey, I don't want to talk about those topics. I'm sorry, I really do prefer to keep that part of my life private. Or again, as I said earlier, you change the subject. You quickly transition the conversation to a different topic and you just move away from the personal question. Your goal is not only to make you feel comfortable, but everyone else. I can never underestimate the power of humor. If you can use humor to diffuse any of the situations that I have mentioned while you're still deflecting the question. I want to give you another example. In the book Little Women, okay? The character Jo. Well, she's asked about her romantic feelings. So you know what she just says? I don't know. I never saw anyone yet that I thought would make me want to give up my liberty. Ooh, everybody can smile, but they know the topic's over. Or you may just have to address it privately. If the guest persists in asking personal questions of everybody, despite your attempts to deflect, consider addressing the issue privately, maybe later in the evening or in the kitchen. If you ask the person to, hey, I've got a question to ask you in the kitchen, you take them away from the dinner table. Or if you know that person has that problem, let them know when you've invited them. Hey, I expect that you'll be on good behavior and don't ask questions that are too personal. You've got to express your discomfort with their line of questioning. You've got to ask them to please stop asking those kinds of questions. And the hard part is for you to remain calm and composed because you might be getting a little frustrated. But you don't want any guest to feel awkward. The positive atmosphere can help dissolve the tension. Scenario 5. Guest insists on helping in the kitchen. Now, sometimes, if you know the person really well, you are happy to receive help when you're working in the kitchen. But other times, when a guest starts helping, well, it can actually interrupt your thoughts about what you're doing. It can slow down the process of getting your meal ready. And then before you know it, other guests are feeling a little bit guilty. They're like, oh, maybe I should come in and help too. And so before you know it, you've kind of lost track of what you're doing. You're so busy trying to socialize and talk to other people, or possibly think of what everybody could be doing. And some of us have smaller kitchens, so that really one more person working in it just creates confusion. So, and also if you're a reluctant host, you might just need that space to take a breath away from everybody. Now, you may have a guest that's rather persistent. Oh no, I want to help you. I love helping you. What do? Well, thank the guest. Thank you so much for offering to help me. I just appreciate that so much. But personally, I'd like to work on my own. I do that best. Or you might politely but firmly reiterate your initial refusal, and then just say, you know what, I've got everything under control. I just prefer you as my guest to relax and enjoy yourself. Or you might actually offer an alternative task. I mean, if the guest is insistent on helping, or you might start thinking, well, maybe there are some things that person could help me. Well, find ways that maybe it doesn't mean that they're going to be totally in the kitchen. If you haven't set the table, ask them to set the table, or pour drinks, or if you have an appetizer, serve appetizers. Or redirect their attention, engage the guest in conversation, or involve them in another aspect of the gathering to distract them from their desire to help in the kitchen. In other words, you're saying, hey, this was a great idea to chat a few minutes in the kitchen, but I'd really appreciate now if you wouldn't mind just going back and sit in the living room to make sure that everybody else is chatting well, and I'll just finish up here. But sometimes a guest just doesn't leave the kitchen. They are convinced that you are just being polite, and you actually really do need their help. And as I said earlier, then, if that's a problem, give them one thing to do, but get them out of the kitchen. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the things you might do is saying, hey, would you just make sure that everybody is circling well in the living room, and they're all talking, and if there's a lull in conversation, can you get the conversation going again? Okay, scenario 6. Okay, what do you do when your guest brings an uninvited guest? Now let me use example again. Jane Austen's novel Mansfield Park. Tom Bertram just unexpectedly brings Mr. Yates to Mansfield Park, and it actually disrupts the whole household. Tom's father, he's rather upset, and he says to his son, Tom, you should have informed us of Mr. Yates' arrival. We are not equipped to host another guest at such short notice. And Tom says, well, Father, Mr. Yates is a dear friend. I thought it'd be a pleasant surprise. Tom's father says, a pleasant surprise, perhaps for you, but it has disrupted the household's arrangements. Mrs. Norris, ensure Mr. Yates is made comfortable, but Tom, you must consider the implications of such actions in the future. Okay. Have you had an unexpected person arriving at your door for dinner, and what do you do, or what did you do? Let's face it, it's really difficult to just tell that person, oh, I'm sorry, you weren't invited. Would you please go? What do you do? Well, most likely you welcome the uninvited guest warmly, make them feel comfortable, because your whole goal this evening is to have a pleasant atmosphere with everybody else. Now, you might even just say, hey, I'm glad you could join us. Let me find you a seat and something to drink, but I am so sorry. I actually don't have enough seating around the table, but hey, I will make you a plate and get you sitting as close as possible to us, like whatever it takes. But you may also be able to seat that person. So you quickly adjust the seating arrangements to accommodate this extra guest. You may need to find that extra chair. It might be a lawn chair, whatever you have. But you probably do need to rearrange the table setting. You just say, hey, let's make a little more room at the table. Everyone, please shift over a bit so we can fit another place setting. That's probably going to make everybody more relaxed than you're getting all keyed up and trying to convince this person, oh, I'm so sorry, you have to leave. That's just going to create a lot of discomfort. The next thing is you ensure there's got to be enough food and drinks to go around. So if necessary, you may have to adjust portion sizes, or you might suddenly bring out a frozen vegetable and cook it. I mean, you always want to make the person feel relaxed. Hey, we've got plenty to go. Usually when you have people over, you do cook extra food, don't you? But if you don't, you just start looking in the freezer and say, hey, I'm just going to grab an extra frozen vegetable, or, oh my gosh, I have an appetizer in the fridge. Or if you have extra time, you might tell the person who brought the person, can you run down to the store and find something else to make sure we have enough food? And if the uninvited guest's presence is causing not just logistical issues, but maybe it's causing discomfort, you might have to address the situation privately with the person who brought them, saying, you know what, I'm so happy to see your friend, but I wasn't expecting an extra guest tonight. I mean, I'll try to make do. And, maybe you can run down to the cafeteria or run down to the restaurant and, get some extra food. But in the future, I'd really appreciate if you'd let me know in advance, because I could have made room for that person. I could have cooked a little bit extra food. Now, you may feel frustrated, but don't ruin the whole evening by getting tense and maybe a little angry at this person who brought the invited guest or uninvited guest. Control your anger, control your frustration, because your whole goal is to make everyone else feel relaxed. And so even the uninvited one, make them feel welcome so that your dinner party can proceed smoothly. Scenario 7, one of your guests arrived late. Well, there's really no one strategy to handle a guest being late. I mean, this person could actually have a really good reason for being late. Now, once again, you can see that I like Pride and Prejudice. Mr. Collins in Pride and Prejudice, he arrived late, but then he tells Mrs. Bennet, oh, I am extremely sorry, madam, for my delay. I have been detained by the most unfortunate accident on the road. Okay. Well, you might be more frustrated if there doesn't seem to be a good reason for the guest's lateness. For example, in Jane Austen's book Persuasion, Anne Elliot arrives late to a dinner party, and Lady Russell is a little abrupt. She says, Miss Elliot, you are finally here. We have just begun, so you haven't missed much. Or in the novel Howell's Moving Castle, Sophie arrives late to a dinner party at the castle. Howell speaks to her very directly. You've decided to join us at last. We were wondering when you'd show up. Okay, could you say all those types of things? What do you do when one of your guests show up lately? Well, you probably need to just greet them warmly. Forget about some of the rude comments that I just showed to you or gave to you from those fictional characters. Welcome the late guest politely. Make them feel comfortable and avoid drawing attention to their lateness. Because what is your goal? Your goal is to have a pleasant evening. Your goal is not to begin the evening a little angry, a little frustrated, a little stressed. Instead, you say, hey, it's great to see you. We're just about to start the main course, but let me get you a drink. Or you might pause the meal for a little bit, adjust the timing to accommodate the late guests so they don't miss out on any part of the dinner. I mean, if you tell everyone dinner's at 6, plan to have it ready at 6:30 or even later, so that way if people do show up later, it doesn't interfere with your actual dinner. Now, another option is provide a brief update, because your guest may actually have a good reason for being late. So as you welcome that person in, offer a quick update on what the guest missed or any key moments they should be aware of, so that they can easily integrate into the conversation and activities. And you might even say, hey, we're just so glad that you're able to come under the circumstances that you just went through. Minimize the disruption. That's the key thing when we have social events. Try to handle the situation discreetly. Avoid drawing attention to their lateness, because that's going to just disrupt the flow of the evening, isn't it? Serve dinner. Very often we worry about, well, am I going to have my dinner all dried up, or do I keep waiting for this person? Actually, serve dinner, even if some guests haven't yet arrived, and welcome them when they do just arrive, assuming that they've got a reason for being late. But sometimes now with the cell phone, unlike in our books like Persuasion, they have a cell phone, and so that's sometimes harder to not expect at least a call or a text. So then we can get more frustrated when the late person hasn't even called you. However, once again, your goal is to make sure everyone has a good time, including you. So you don't want to say, so why didn't you call me? No. Scenario 8, just as you are serving the food, one guest informs you that they have a dietary restriction. What? I've heard of I have a relative that says every time one of her I have a friend that when one of her relatives shows up, she's, I'm never sure whether we're going to be vegan, vegetarian, or whether we can eat chicken, or whether we can just eat fish. So some people just always seem to have some type of dietary restriction. But you know what? You're not actually responsible to find appropriate food for this person, especially when they did not inform you when they agreed to attend your dinner that they have this dietary restriction. Okay, but here is a couple of suggestions. If your food's ready, you don't really need the stress of finding alternative food. You may just have to apologize and say, oh, I wish I'd known earlier I could have cooked food that you can eat, but I hope that there's something on the table that I've already prepared that you can eat. Or if you're not ready to sit down and you begin eating, ask if there's a simple alternative food option that you might be able to prepare quickly for this person. Okay, you can try to be accommodating, but it doesn't need to have to be so accommodating that it throws off your meal, throws off everything else that you'd planned for that evening. Now, scenario 9. Someone begins a conversation that they know is going to cause tension. Now, I've included some suggestions how to handle that situation a little bit earlier. I mean, so many of these have overlaps of strategies of what to do with people when these scenarios occur. But at any point, somehow you want to control unwanted topics. Now, if you can anticipate some volatile discussions that could happen at your dinner party, make it clear, perhaps as soon as everyone arrives, no one is going to discuss these particular topics because it seems to raise all of our blood pressures. I mean, you can just say, you know what, we're here for a pleasant evening, so let's not get into those heavy-duty, tough topics. This isn't the time. We just want to celebrate Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever you're celebrating. So, scenario 10. Now, what do you do if someone actually criticizes the food you prepared? I've got another one for you. A guest like Aunt March. She's arriving at a dinner party, and she is known for her picky and often unpleasant remarks. And at one dinner party, she says, "What a disagreeable smell! It makes me quite ill. I shall not touch it." Or there's the character Gaston in Beauty and the Beast. He says, "What kind of feast is this? I'd expected something far better for a man of my appetite and taste." And then there's Lady Catherine de Bourgh in Pride and Prejudice. She says, "I am not at all satisfied with this meal. I expected, much more from the likes of this household." What? Do you ever experience any of that? What do you do if you're a victim to any kind of criticism about your food? Well, the first thing is remain calm, stay composed, avoid becoming defensive, even if the criticism feels personal. Just thank the guest for their feedback. Oh, is that how you feel about my food? Let's change the topic, redirect the conversation. Shift the focus away from the criticism by asking the guest about their preferences or experiences, perhaps with restaurants, food that they do actually prefer, trying to diffuse the tension. Stay positive. Keep the atmosphere upbeat and positive. You are going to focus on the company of the other people that are with you. You're not going to dwell on that criticism. You are going to enjoy everyone else there. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to check out the videos on the screen for more great content, and please be sure to click on the like button or the notify button so that others might even become aware of this episode. Now, Hopefully, there were some good suggestions in these scenarios, but if you have better suggestions or you've had experiences with these scenarios, I'd love to read your comments. So let me end this episode. It's a quote from Alice Waters. She's an American chef and entrepreneur. Now, she has some encouraging words about what a great ideal dinner evening should look like. And she says, I think that a dinner party should be a magical experience with lots of good food, laughter, and conversation.